All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm happy to welcome back the Bulwark's Will Saletan. Will, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. I just went up to see off my the last child graduating from college. So
Wow.
my wife and I signed off on the last payment, and now we're
Mhm.
like, what do we do with our lives?
Is it wrong to say I envy you? Um, well, I should have had kids earlier. Okay. Um, dude, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's an exciting time, and you're an empty nester, so more podcast time for Matt Lewis
Definitely,
in the news, right?
definitely.
All right, well, we're going to start with this Ashli Babbitt story. For those who don't remember, Ashli Babbitt is a Trump supporter who stormed the Capitol on January 6th. She was, I guess, had broken glass or somehow was trying to crawl through some glass, and she was warned and then shot and killed by a police officer. And apparently there's now been a settlement where she's going to get like $5 million, her family is, from the government. Will Saletan, what are we to make of that story?
So I'm trying not to come around to the general thesis, Matt, that the insurrectionists won, but kind of the insurrectionists won. Okay, what did they want? They wanted Donald Trump back in power. He's back in power, albeit legitimately this time. They've all been pardoned or commuted. They're all out, including the ones who assaulted police. And I'll go off on that if you let me. And now, we're going to issue on behalf of the government this settlement, essentially, I guess not explicitly acknowledging that that this police officer shouldn't have shot her, even though she was breaking through the glass, it was the last barrier between the mob and members of Congress. There was at the White House yesterday an event where Trump and Byron Donalds, who is it, Brian Mast, talked about, police officers who've fallen in the line of duty. We're going to have a new medal for police officers. And, we stand for law and order. Meanwhile, all of these criminals, including violent criminals who planned and executed this assault on the Capitol and beat the hell out of these police officers, and we ended up with officers dying, of course, they're all exonerated because they're, the criminals, the guy the criminals wanted to be president is president. He pardons them all. And now we're going to have this $5 million or so issued to the criminal who got shot, the family of this person. So it's all, Matt, what happened to defund the police, blame, we're the party of law and order. What happened to that?
Well, that's what I was going to say, Will. Look, this evokes a couple of thoughts. One would be, imagine a police officer who doesn't at that point take the shot after expressing numerous warnings. If one person goes through that door, it's going to be, the floodgates are open, just as happened at earlier stages before we got to this point at the Capitol. And so I think that police officer had a very difficult decision, but the decision that I think most conservatives, law and order folks would have said was the right decision under any other context. And what paying this $5 million reminds me of is every once in a while, Will, you'll hear a story where somebody breaks into someone's house, and then while they're illegally inside the house, they get shot or they get injured, and then they sue the homeowner. And if they win, and they sometimes win, it's usually a travesty. Obviously, if someone breaks into your house and then they're running away, you're not supposed to shoot them like if they're on the street at that point. But when they're still in the house, I think that's fair game. It used to be that it would be like law and order conservatives who would be like, you broke into that house, man. You got what you had coming. And now it's like, again, a tacit apology and admission of guilt, which I think is not only wrong in terms of justice, but besmirches the police officer who was doing his duty as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Okay. So look, I look at this and think Republicans are just phony. All the law and order stuff was phony. Maybe that's not fair. Do you talk to these people? Do you understand how it is that they compartmentalize that these particular criminals are the good guys and these particular cops are not the good guys?
Look, I mean, so I live in, my dad was a prison guard for 30 years in Hagerstown, Maryland. My father-in-law used to be a Capitol a park policeman. I live in West Virginia. My mom lives in Pennsylvania. I am surrounded by Trump supporters. I have not specifically asked this question, but this is just a microcosm of a larger phenomena that happens all the time, whereby the rules that would apply under one context no longer apply once Trump is involved. And no, I haven't gotten any sort of satisfactory answer. It's just when we do it, it's good. When they do it, it's bad.
I it feels to me when I read this stuff, it feels to me like the rationale is these people were violent. It's like a civil disobedience. It was illegitimate. The election was a lie. I mean, every day Trump is saying the election was stolen. It literally was stolen. We'll talk about this. He just went all over the Gulf, the Persian Gulf, telling other countries, our election was stolen in 2020. So if you believe this myth, then it flows from it that all the people who were at the Capitol were actually on the right side of history, right?
Freedom
And
fighters.
they were freedom fighters, exactly. Yeah, they were freedom fighters. And so all the cops who I, well, I guess this was like the Edmund Pettus Bridge, except it was the
Yeah.
U.S. Capitol.
Well, that's the thing that they have changed places because in their minds they are basically, one half hippie like protesters, one half civil rights Rosa Parks, heroes. I mean,
Yeah,
martyrs. But it used to be that that was the other side of the political aisle who mainly occupied that turf. And so it is a weird role reversal. But you're right. Like, if you truly believe that the election was stolen, and you have to really suspend a lot of disbelief to get to that point, but if you truly believe that, then it would seem to justify all sorts of action and perhaps civil disobedience, as it were.
yeah. I don't know how else you would do it, and because sometimes I wonder why Trump keeps repeating this. Like it happened, it's over. He insists that this be believed, and maybe the whole house of cards falls apart if the myth collapses. I mean, in polling, it's pretty clear most people don't believe this, and maybe he desperately wants to. But if you don't believe it, if you understand that in fact the election wasn't stolen, then you're kind of left with, if not viewing these people, I mean, certainly the ones who plan violence or should be treated like ordinary criminals, but even the people who went in, what are their dupes? And if you believe they're dupes, then you've got to go with the whole Jack Smith theory that Trump perpetrated a fraud
Yeah.
to deceive all these people and succeeded. And if you're not going to hold him accountable, um, I just don't know what's left. But it's mystifying to me how Republicans, and they clearly do, can go on believing that they are the party of law and order while they're doing stuff like pardoning these people and sending $5 million to Ashli Babbitt's family.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of situations where Republicans have changed sides, Russia. And honestly, like, some of this conversation we could have been having a year ago because, nothing changes and everything's the pattern. We are in a pattern that has been going on now since 2016. But the latest is that Donald Trump, I guess, apparently has been trying to broker a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. And he had a perfect call with Vladimir Putin, where apparently Trump has now backed away or allowed Putin to outmaneuver him again and to somehow postpone this ceasefire. But what are you seeing, and what do you make of this?
Okay, so there, I want to talk for a minute about this event at the White House. It was the law and order thing, but Trump took questions for about 15 minutes. And he was asked all about the call with Putin. Hey, you all want to know what happened in this call, right? So let me just flag three of his answers here, which are just mind-boggling to me. Okay, one of them is, reporter says, "Hey, you posted on Truth Social. Vladimir, stop." Right? And he didn't stop. So what did you say to him in this? What was it? A 2-hour phone call? What did you say to him about it? Trump, No, I didn't bring that up. What the hell? You asked this guy to stop. So there's this myth that Trump is a tough guy. Obviously, in the face of Vladimir Putin, he doesn't follow through. If Barack Obama did this, if Joe Biden did this, Republicans would be all over him. You told him to stop. He didn't stop. Second one. This one kills me. Reporter says to Trump, "You mentioned that you believe Putin wants peace, but he just attacked Ukraine yesterday," which was a massive drone strike in Kiev and other places. "So what makes you think that he wants peace?" And Trump says, "Well, he's in a war. Nobody said they're fighting, they're attacking each other. People are dying. He's in a war. He's fighting a war. Nobody said he was going to stop." What the hell?
Yes.
You can't say he's a man of peace while he's literally waging war. And then your defense of why he's a man of peace is he's at war. And it's, of course, his war, which Trump won't say. Wasn't Ukraine's idea.
I think this fits the category, Will, of if you hear Trump say it, you just sort of nod along. Oh, yeah, it makes sense. But when you actually read the text, it is utterly incoherent and insane and meaningless.
This was, just to remind folks, this was one of the three pillars in 1984, right? War is peace. Except in Trump's version, it's peace is war. It's like he's a man of peace. Well, he's waging. Well, why is he doing it? Why is he attacking? Because he's at war. Okay, one more. Trump says, "I think something's going to happen," meaning Putin's going to accept some kind of a peace deal, which, of course, there's no sign of this at all. "And if he doesn't, I just back away and they're going to have to keep going again." Oh, man, that's a hell of a way to deter Russia. If you don't stop this war, we're just going to back away. And watch Russia continue to pummel Ukraine, like no money to Ukraine, no arms to Ukraine. There is no, so let me come back to you, Matt. The party of deterrence. How did we get here? How did we get to this complete abdication of deterrence?
It's a long, long story. It's a long, long story, Will Saletan. I truly believe that it's that the forces that are at play. we could talk about the erosion of American culture, the degradation of our entertainment, reality TV, and then I think once Donald Trump, it really accelerates with Trump, right? But Trump is a symptom. But it's insane. I mean, we literally use the word Orwellian to mean things that you just described, right? Like things that are actually the opposite, but are like freedom coffee, right? or whatever. It's crazy. But yeah, and again, this is another example, Will, where like Republicans are supposed to be strong and have like a clear vision and understand that like if you can't negotiate unless you have some leverage, right? And Trump especially is supposed to be strong and wrote The Art of the Deal. And here he is like trying to negotiate a ceasefire, and his leverage is if they keep going, we'll just back away. That's his threat. His threat is I'll just leave. Which, in a bilateral deal, walking away actually does have some leverage. If you're the third party trying to negotiate the peace, leaving, particularly as it applies to the stronger party, is not a threat.
Yeah, and nobody seems to care. I mean, there's been a whole series of Trump saying he would do something. Well, are you going to do? I mean, every week Trump says, "Talk to me in a couple of weeks." When he's asked, last week you said you might do some kind of sanctions on Russia, or people in your administration said that. No, it's always talk to me in a couple of weeks. So basically, Putin's not stupid. He's got the message that Trump really, 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 really does not want to confront Putin about anything.
Mm-mm.
And Putin knows that Trump doesn't care about anything but money. And that was, just to remind people, going all the way back to the Russia hoax, which was actually a legitimate investigation. One of the reasons that the U.S. intelligence community cited in their analysis of Russia's intervention in the 2016 election to help Trump was that Putin understood that Trump was a businessman, and businessmen cut deals. And Putin had great experience with Berlusconi, who, they don't have ideology, they don't have beliefs, they don't have principles. They'll just like, what can we do? And that's what Putin's doing. How can we work out some kind of a U.S.-Russia relationship
Yeah.
that doesn't take account, doesn't address this unfortunate business of us, beating up the Ukrainians?
Which is why I personally believe it's vital for the president and the country to have something of a moral vision. And it doesn't mean that you have to be stupid. It doesn't mean you can't be pragmatic, but it can't be nihilistic. And that is kind of where we are now, right? There's no sense that America has this vision um, uh, about freedom or democracy or whatever. It's totally
Right.
void of any sort of moral component.
Yeah. So now you're reminding me of Marco Rubio, who used to be somebody and is now Trump's flunky Secretary of State, was on TV this weekend. He was, I think, I was on Face the Nation. I can't, or yeah, I think so. And he said, America previously, our foreign policy was about what was good for the world, and now it's going to be about what's good for America. And so this is Marco Rubio, who used to be one of these globalist neocon hawk guys, essentially embracing the Trump JD Vance vision of foreign policy and just renouncing all the stuff about democracy. And I know, like, the Iraq war gave intervention a bad name, gave nation building a bad name. But what's been substituted for it is this complete emptiness. It's that America is no different from any other country. These people who claim to be America first, they've just gutted America of the values that made it distinctive. If America is just going to be about pursuing its own financial interest, which is what Trump says and what he's actually doing, then we're just not different from any other country on this planet. And so both internally in the abdication of our civil rights, of our constitutional principles, and then externally in the abdication of our defense of values and defense of human rights and democracy abroad, we've just evacuated the term America of any moral meaning.
Totally. Yeah, look, I mean, when Trump goes abroad and says the election was stolen, that's basically saying we're no better. You're corrupt, we're corrupt. Everyone's corrupt, right? You don't think we kill people too? Come on. Like, that's Trump's whole thing. People have forgotten this part. During the first Trump term, during one of his impeachment trials, a major part of Trump's defense was attacking past American presidents and saying that they were all pretty corrupt and pretty bad, whether it's Reagan and Iran-Contra or John Adams and the, Alien and Sedition Acts or whatever, FDR, they're all bad. And so a lot of Trump's, message has been, I'm bad. They were all bad too. And Joe Biden, the Biden crime family, which brings me to my next point, Will Saletan. Donald Trump does things publicly, like the Qatari plane deal, right? It can't be a bribe because I'm doing it in front of everybody. And I'd be stupid not to take they're offering me a plane. I'd be crazy not to take it. Donald Trump, his crimes, his scandals are public, and therefore, remember, he invites Russia. If you've got Hillary's emails,
That's right.
he does this all publicly. And recently, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson said that that's how it's different than the Biden crime family, that they do things behind the curtains. Trump does it publicly. I've actually got a take on this too. But first, I want to go to you. And like, there is a point, and I would actually say strategically, Trump, it works, but I don't think it makes it right. What do you think?
I don't want to steal your point if you're going to make the
Please.
same one I'm going to make. It's so if you are corrupt privately, first of all, maybe that implies a sense of shame. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're just concerned about the law. But secondly, nobody else knows about it, so it's a one-off. I'm going to cheat with this person. I'm going to cheat with that person. I'm going to take this illegal money, whatever. And you're deciding case by case. If you do it in public, you're sending a message, right? The message is, this is how we do business in this country, right? And we're all familiar with other countries that are run by corrupt regimes that, this is how things are done. You have to smear this person and that person. You have to what are you going to give the government? What are you going to pay them off with? Trump is just turning us into one of those countries. And every time he does it in public, he's signaling to other people, we want you to do more of this. So it's contagious. You're deliberately spreading the infection
Yep.
of corruption. So that's my take on it. What's yours?
Very similar. Very similar. I think, yeah. So I think there's think of it from a societal standpoint, right? There's 3 levels of society. Like level 1 would be everyone is well behaved. Level 2 is people do bad things, but they're ashamed of it and they try to cover it up and hide it because it wouldn't be accepted. Level 3 is brazenness. We're not trying to hide it. We're open about it. And so I think this goes to your earlier point about this degradation of our society and culture and entertainment and all of that we have now arrived at a point where we're not level 1, we're not good, but we're also not level 2. We're not worried. We don't have a sense that society will condemn us or shame us or punish us. Therefore, we have to be hypocrites. We no longer have to be. By the way, being a hypocrite is not necessarily the worst thing in the world. It means you have standards. It means being a hypocrite means that there are standards and that you are ashamed. What we are now at is the let your freak flag fly stage, which I think you could argue as an individual is better than shame for your mental health. I certainly think collectively as a society, and this is to your point, Will, about the contagiousness, that this is much, much, much worse for a society.
Okay, so let me for a minute, I don't have my little pony prop here, but let me argue the other side just for a minute. First of all, I basically agree with you, but let me just what we call this, angel's advocate. I'll play angel's advocate for a moment. The Qatari plane. Trump does seem to feel the obligation to pretend that, well, this is a gift to the United States, to the Defense Department, not to me personally. So that is a form of at least pretending that there is still a rule that the president can't accept a personal $400 million gift from a foreign government. Is that a fair rebuttal?
Okay, I think that's a caveat that deserves an asterisk. I think that it's an asterisk, but I think this is part of the Trump MO, where while he's doing all of this publicly, he always embeds small truisms. Like there's always an element of truth, actually that's the wrong word. There's always an element of plausible deniability embedded within the very public lie or public crime or scandal.
I guess. Yeah. He's got. I mean, and then he's got the whole thing about and when I leave, I'll donate it to my library. And Reagan has a big plane. I've seen it on TV. I debated in front of it. And that's sort of. So there is a kind of a shtick about that. Let me ask you a question though, Matt. So I had you diagnosed in my head as a libertarian, a hawk, not primarily a moral conservative. But the moral conservatives, it has turned out in the Trump era, have been the people who, well, the neocons too, but the moral conservatives have turned out to be the people who recognized that Trump was a fundamentally immoral character and that that's what he was selling and creating, and that everything has flowed from that. All the evil that's subsequently has flowed from that. When I hear you talking about the decline of our culture, that this is a cultural decline, and that's why Trump is doing this stuff, why he's getting away with it, why an entire political party is behind him, why our voters didn't punish it but rewarded it last year. First of all, would you say you're primarily a cultural conservative in that sense? And I mean, what do you think is the state of America's culture? Is America in decline? What would it take to pull us out of this? How plausible is that?
Wow, dude, I did not drink enough coffee for
Sorry.
Will Saletan. Let me just say, for those watching, there's two reasons Will Saletan is a great guest. One reason is he always brings the receipts. He knows his shit. The second is he will often then have a great answer and then throw it and say, "But what do you think?" Which rarely do guests do, and it actually facilitates a dialogue and a conversation that sometimes is missing from an interview. Unfortunately, the downside is you have to sometimes have answers. And I don't always have good ones, especially when being an interviewer sometimes is a crutch. You just put somebody put somebody on autopilot and phone it in. Yeah, so I definitely grew up in a Christian conservative household. That was probably for my dad. That was real. I think his primary driving a political sort of motivation for his political worldview. Um, and I definitely do believe this stuff, and I think the founders did too. I mean, and not to say they were evangelical Christians or anything like that, but I think that like looking at Rome, for example, in the fall of Rome, and you can see all sorts of things that went wrong. But I think among them was not just like moral degradation, but just a lack of um, a lack of trust in institutions, that corruption fostered this lack of trust, this erosion of trust. And I do think we are there, to be honest with you. I'll also say this, growing up in that sort of social conservative background, not that I've always been an angel myself, but growing up in that social conservative milieu, I was against Bill Clinton. And I thought Bill Clinton should be impeached and removed. And I still do. And I think I don't want to say a straight line, but I think that Bill Clinton laid the groundwork for Donald Trump. And in some ways, Bill Clinton demonstrated, we saw how feminists and others circled the wagons around Bill Clinton and rallied around him, despite the fact that he, committed perjury, aside from the stuff he did with Monica Lewinsky. And I think that Republicans, some of them looked and said, this is how the game is played. And so I don't want to entirely blame Democrats and Bill Clinton, but I do think that I've been consistent. Like I was against Bill Clinton and I'm against Donald Trump. And Trump is more dangerous in terms of his either in terms of his authoritarian tendencies or what he has realized he can get away with. But I think they're both cut from the same cloth in some ways.
So at the time of Bill Clinton, I thought I was one of the liberals who said, look, this is about sex. It's gross what he did. Sometimes in my head, I wanted to punch Bill Clinton. By the way, Secret Service, do not arrest me. I'm not actually threatening to punch Bill Clinton.
No,
sorry.
Do not 86,
the Comey rule, right?
5 or whatever number he was.
Let's specify that. But I was furious with Bill Clinton.
What number was he? 43? What number was Bill Clinton?
He was 43, right?
43. Okay.
No, Bush was 43. Bush was 43. Clinton was 42.
42. Okay.
Yeah, he was 42.
Wow.
So, because there was Bush 41 and Bush 43, and that's how you can remember where Bill Clinton is.
That's it.
So at the time, I thought, look, this is okay. It's gross, but it's just about sex. But we didn't yet have the experiment. What if you had sort of a corrupt personality, but it wasn't just about sex, right? And I understand it was the whole perjury thing. Well, look, it is certainly true that some of the people who said Bill Clinton was immoral and should be impeached, like Bill Bennett, turned out to not believe a word of anything, like the whole Book of Virtues garbage. So, and Paula White, and there's a whole bunch of people who call themselves, conservative Christians, Bible believing, blah, blah, blah. And they just rationalize whatever Trump does. They're just stamps for him. But, and I'm thinking of my colleague Mona Charen at the Bulwark. There were people who said Bill Clinton was immoral and who meant it. And they meant that they believed in the principle and they were applying it to Clinton. And when a candidate came along and then a politician, a president who behaved immorally, and it wasn't just about sex, it was about everything. It was about the destruction of every value that Americans held dear. They held fast to that, and they said, we reject this guy. We don't care if he's our nominee. We don't care if he's going to get us some seats on the Supreme Court. It's wrong, and it's dangerous. And they turned out to be right. They turned out to be right that evil flows from bad acts, flow from bad people. And some people are just bad. And Trump is like the
Yeah.
worst person. And
Character is
yes,
predictive, and if they'll, if you're going to lie about this, you might lie about that. And Bill Clinton talked about compartmentalizing. But yeah, no, I think that character is, if you get that wrong, everything flows from it, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm glad you remind that was the core word. Character was the word. And I have been persuaded of it. I've been persuaded of it. I should have accepted it earlier, but I believed that Clinton could compartmentalize, and maybe that's true of some people, but in Trump's case, you just see how the bad character flows out into everything. And the people who did not accept that analysis to begin with are the people who then proceeded to rationalize piecemeal. Oh, it's okay if he fires the FBI director who's investigating him. Oh, it's okay if he abandons our allies. Oh, it's okay if he, abandons free markets. That one thing after another flows from that character.
But I also think it speaks to the degradation of society, because Bill Clinton got away with things, but he also felt the need. He had to jump through a lot of hoops, and the public punished him in '94, not for Monica Lewinsky, but for his. He felt he he gets elected, goes very much to the left on things, gays in the military, Hillary care, and then the public pushes back, and Democrats lose the House. And Bill Clinton literally changed his political outlook and said, the era of big government is over. I'm going to end welfare as you know it. And so he was responsive. And then we have this Lewinsky scandal that hits sort of late after going, I did not, first he denies it, but eventually he has to kind of confess and admit and apologize and all of that. And so the system, although Clinton skates and he leaves office pretty popular, believe it or not, he had to rein things in because of public pressure and electoral concerns even. And I think that is missing now. I mean, with Donald Trump, we can talk about Access Hollywood. We could talk about Stormy Daniels. We could talk about whatever. Part of the problem is him, but part of the problem is he got away with, I don't know, January 6th and the public still elected him again. So at the end of the day, if the American public is willing to tolerate someone who has this lack of character, then we kind of get what we deserve, right?
So you're reminding me of last night. Trump did this speech, a dinner speech to his newly installed board of the Kennedy Center, and his whole pretense was, "We're bringing back morality, we're bringing back decency. We're getting rid of lesbian Shakespeare at the Kennedy Center, and we're going to do family-friendly programming." And it's sort of a restoration of decency. That's the pretense. But then he talks about the how the election was rigged, the 2020 election, which he repeats all the time. Except he adds something new. He says, they don't even push back anymore when I say it's rigged. People basically, I've won. I keep saying the election is rigged, and people don't even contest anymore. Which is, Matt, it's true. The reporters are tired. They're numb to it. They don't he just says it all the time. And so we've actually lost the moral barrier. The moral barrier would be the one that says, we're not going to let you lie about something as fundamental as whether our democracy was faked in 2020, right? Whether an election was phony. So under the pretense of restoring values, what the right has done is sort of, they've bulldozed the values. And instead of Bill Clinton being punished for his excesses in 1994, Donald Trump has proven and discovered and proven and has exposed to all of us that those barriers aren't there anymore, right? We don't tell the president, you lied, and therefore we're not going to reelect you as president. No, we're going to put you back in power. You attempt a coup. You sent people to beat up police officers. We're going to put you back in power. So that cultural barrier has actually fallen, and it's fallen at the hands of the people who said they were going to defend cultural barriers.
Now, speaking of lies, though, I have to bring up my a recent guest on this podcast, Jamie Kirchick, has a piece up at Politico. No, I haven't read it yet, but judging by the headline, he's arguing that the lie that Democrats in the media told about Joe Biden's fitness to be president again is worse than any of the lies that Donald Trump has told. I hope I'm not misrepresenting that, but it's certainly a sharp take. And, you know, uh, again, go read it. But what do you make of that? And the look, I mean, we are now in a feeding frenzy over Joe Biden. We've got multiple books here that are kind of detailing the level at which there was a so-called cover-up of Biden, the degree to which he had lost his mental acuity. And now, of course, we have this report that he has, I guess, advanced prostate cancer. And people are saying that's we should have known about that because this didn't just happen overnight. This has been developing for a while. So anyway, what's your take?
So on the question of which is worse, look, on the one hand, nobody's worse than Donald Trump about this stuff. In quantity, his lies just vastly outstrip any other politician on the left or the right. In quality, they're vastly worse. I mean, telling a lie, in this case about the election, that literally caused an attack on the United States Capitol, caused deaths, threatened our whole democracy. Like nothing Joe Biden has lied about it reaches that level. So I'm not going to say it's worse. It isn't. But one of my cardinal rules of life is don't lie to yourself. If you lie to you, we were talking earlier about character. If you get bad character, bad acts, and continue to flow from that. If you lie to yourself, more self-deceit and more deceit will flow from that.
But as Richard Feynman says, but you are the easiest one to fool.
Yes, unfortunately, that's true. And so my message to anybody who's a Biden supporter, as I was, and to some extent still am, and I will defend Joe Biden on a lot of things, but this was wrong. This was like I was one of the gazillion liberal Democrat or whatever people who Biden supporters who saw that debate in what was it, June of 2024 and said, holy cow, oh my God, this is so much worse than I thought, right? And once you see that, you got to face up to it. And you could see, Matt, a similar division to what happened on the right, with some Democrats facing the truth and saying, okay, I can't deny reality. This is really bad. Even if Sean Hannity said it for 2 years, it's still true. we have a a cognitive problem going on with Joe Biden. And then there were other people who just tried to lie to themselves further, and that will always lead you astray. So I'm going to say kudos to other people in the Democratic Party. Kudos to Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who recognized the problem and stood up, and they forced a change. And I think it was okay, I will agree with, Tapper and Thompson and other people that like Biden shouldn't have stayed as long as he did, but he did get out and his party did force him out, and they gave Americans in the end a choice between someone who wasn't Joe Biden, who was cognitively prepared, and Donald Trump. It didn't work, but they did the right thing. The Republican Party has not reached that stage. The Republican Party is still supporting the liar, and he's a much worse liar than Biden ever was. My take. What's yours?
But it worked. They won, and maybe Democrats, if they could have gotten away with it, would have made the same deal, made the same bargain. I'm writing about this right now for the LA Times, so I'm still fleshing out my thoughts. But I think part of my overall take is I think I'm a little more sympathetic. People are attacking the media and the Democrats. And by the way, let me just say, too, patting myself here on the back, I was not David Axelrod or David Ignatius. I was not out there on the front, but I was pretty much saying Biden should get out. Biden's too old. And then I'd probably say, like, but he's not gonna. So let's deal with reality, because he wasn't going to, right? And it took that debate for him to get out. But even though I always kind of thought he was too old, I think I'm more forgiving of what Democrats, for example, I mean, they were playing this hand that they'd been dealt, right? So they've got Joe Biden, the one guy that demonstrably can beat Donald Trump because he did. He's an incumbent president. America usually reelects incumbent presidents. You've got this other opponent. It's not Nikki Haley. It's Donald Trump. Didn't see that one coming necessarily if you're a Democrat. This guy, we say he's an existential threat. So we got to do what we got to do to stop him. Now, if you're going to tell me that Kamala Harris has a better chance, or that fill in the blank, Gavin Newsom, I don't think so. I think that Democrats have a weak bench, and that Joe Biden was the only person in 2020 who could have won as a Democrat. And they're probably reasoning not much has changed since 2020 to 2024. So I think they were dealt a bad hand. And sure, some of them had ulterior motives. Some of them liked being close proximity to power. They're never going to be that close to it again once Biden leaves. But if you really believe that Trump is the worst of two evils, as I think you've demonstrated qualitatively and quantitatively, right, in terms of his the lies, then maybe you just try to run like last time they were able to keep Biden in the basement during COVID, and they maybe it worked. Like one more time, we just have to keep this guy under wrap, and he can have a good night. He had a good State of the Union. We just have to put him out there, have one solid day. He doesn't have to win. He just has to not fall over, and we ride it out. And so, like, was that wrong? I don't know. It was cynical, yes. It was clearly cynical. It was clearly defensive and desperate. It was clearly desperate. Was it morally wrong, knowing the context and the variables? I'm not sure that I would. I'm not sure I would convict them in a court of if there was a trial. And by the way, there could be a trial now. I'm told that Jill Biden may be guilty of elder abuse.
Yeah. Well, to me, the belief that, hey, he could have a good night, we can squeak this out, we just have to keep him under wraps, don't let him talk more than 5 minutes or whatever, that's a species of self-deception to me. You're kidding yourself if you think. And I think
but Will, here's the bet. What's the best? Which is more likely to happen? Is it more likely that Joe Biden could hold it together for 90 minutes? Or is it more likely that Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or Gretchen Whitmer or some other Democrat in June of 2024 can beat Donald Trump and be president?
Well,
I'm not sure they made the wrong call. I'm not sure.
I'm one of the people who believes that because of the substitution of Harris for Biden, Democrats saved 3 or 4 Senate seats. I believe that. So I could be wrong. We don't have the counterfactual.
That's a valid point.
So I think they were better off. And I think that this idea that we're going to like hide him and people won't find out was a kind of self-deception. And I think it also speaks to the illusion of, inertia. Like, hey, I hear your case. He's the only guy. He did it before. He'll do it again. When a guy is 80, 81 years old, this isn't true anymore. You can't count on inertia. And that should be part of the lesson. Things at that age are changing. You can't count on a continuation of the status quo. And that was a fundamental tactical, strategic mistake that Democrats made. Also a moral mistake, if you ask me.
Character counts. Well, Saletan, good conversation, man. Always a pleasure. How can people read your stuff?
I'm at the Bulwark, thebulwark.com. We have articles, podcasts. We have a YouTube channel, Bulwark YouTube channel. Look us up. We got good stuff, and I'd say we have like a 50% overlap with Matt. Is that fair to say?
In terms of
what we believe, do you think like 50% of the time we're in agreement?
Oh, I think in this era, definitely minimum at least 50%. I'd love to go back to an era where we're arguing over nuances between the left and the right, and within the safe confines of a liberal democracy. Then we would probably disagree more.
Right. So the Bulwark is one of the places where the real conservatives, the ones who stood by the conservatism and rejected the abandonment of it and rejected the Trump movement, have found a shelter and a place to stand up. So we welcome anybody to come and visit us.
Awesome. Will Saletan, always a pleasure, man. Thanks for coming back on the pod.
Thanks, man.